Hello and welcome to N.E.S.T Create's session. Our presentation today will be about Picasso. We're going to start in a couple minutes. Just going to wait till 5:30 so everyone joins. Thank you. Okay, does everybody hear everything perfectly? And is the screen clear enough? Just a minute or two more. We'll start straight ahead. Thank you for waiting. Okay, we'll get started. Now, throughout this presentation, I will ask a few questions. If possible, please just leave your answers in the comments. Now, firstly, does anybody know who Picasso is? Okay, so basically, Picasso, I'm sure some of you may have heard of him, is one of the world's most common artists. His main job was a painter. He had many other occupations. For example, he was also a sculptor, a poet, a stage designer, and more. He was born on the 25th of October in 1881 in Malaga, Spain. His nationality was Spanish, and he spent most of his adult life in France. By the end of this presentation, there will be a quiz about the questions carried throughout. You should also be able to find this sent to you by email. Now, according to Picasso's mother, his first word was pis, which comes from lapis, the Spanish word for pencil. Ironic words, people knew that that would be his name. He came from a middle class family. His father was also a painter and a professor of fine arts, which so you can basically guess that it's traveled through the family exam. So basically, it's like a university that Picasso tried to get into, um, and usually the process would take a month. But Picasso was so good at his work that he finished it in a week. At age 13, he was accepted and admitted as a student at this academy. Now, does anybody know anything else about Picasso? If anyone knows, please leave an answer in the comments. I'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute to reply. Okay, to move on, Picasso started his career, as mentioned previously. His father was an artist, and that's how it transferred onto him. Picasso had many artworks, called the Musée Picasso in Barcelona. In the picture, you see what the museum looks like on the inside, with a few of his artworks on the wall. Here are more pictures from inside. It also has some text describing the life of Picasso. On the right are many other pictures from people, and it was one of those things where you can just sit, stand, and stare at a painting for a long time. Picasso's time periods were often split into many different sections. Here are three of the sections. The first is the Blue period, then the Rose period, and then the African influence period. Each period, the name of the period symbolizes what the section or period is about. The Blue period was from 1901 to 1904 and was mainly paintings in shades of blue and bluish green. Now, it sometimes contained other colors, but it was very rare. Split means it's in different sections. So when you split something, you cut it in different sections or separate it, charge him to make some of the paintings. Beggars are frequent subjects in these paintings. He often focused these paintings during the Blue period on beggars and many other like figures of the streets. An example of a painting from the Blue period is the Old Guitarist. It is now located at the Art Institute of Chicago and is about 122 centimeters by 82 centimeters wide. Later on in life, after his death, the image was X-rayed, and the X-rays show three different figures hidden behind the guitarist, which just shows you how detailed Picasso's work was. It showed three different personalities or characters in one picture that we probably cannot recognize by the naked eye. The old guitarist also shows very little sign of life and is close to death, which may mean that it may be a representation of how Picasso felt after the death of his friend. As you can see in the painting, he's trying to hang on to whatever life he has left by playing guitar, but also seems very unhealthy and it looks like he's about to die. Sure, Curly, I will read or I'll read slower. Thank you for the comment. Just to repeat what this said, the picture, the old guitarist, is one of his paintings during the Blue Period, which was between 1901 and 1904. Yeah, after a while, X-rays were carried out on the picture, and it showed three different characters behind the same picture. Another example from the Blue Period was the portrait of Suzanne Bloch. It was 65 centimeters multiplied by 54 centimeters, its dimensions. Suzanne is a well-known singer from Picasso's times. This painting is located at the Sao Paulo Museum of Art in Sao Paulo. As you can see in the painting, it contains shades of blue and green, and these are the main colors in the painting. This is what the Blue Period focused on, and his his paintings change from time to time. It's like certain mood swings. Here is another simple example from the Blue Period. It is a portrait of Solar. Does anybody know what a portrait is? Once again, does anybody know what a portrait is? Just to check. It's okay if you don't. So basic, so basically, a portrait is a painting that shows a person. So it's just a painting of a person. Picasso is known for drawing lots of different portraits of different people. The next time period was from 1904 to 1906. It had a lighter tone than the Blue Period and was mostly orange and pink colors. Now, obviously, it also contained some other colors, but the main focus was orange and pink. It featured many people from circuses, as Picasso was interested in how they would look in paintings. It was also influenced by his relationship with an artist and model, Fernande Oliver. She was often the subject in many of his paintings during the Rose period. He drew many of the portraits of her throughout that time as well. Currently situated at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Stein was an American novelist, poet, and art collector. Does anybody know what a novelist is? Basically, a novelist is just a writer, someone who writes novels or long stories or books. Stein usually hosted a salon in France where many famous artists such as Picasso would meet and spend time together. This is how Picasso met her and started to admire her, and therefore he drew a portrait of her. She was very famous at the time all over the world. Another example from the Rose period is the Olapin Agile. It is also at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and it is around 100 centimeters by 100 centimeters. Now, this picture clearly shows how there is only, well, mostly just orange and pinky colors, and that is what he focused his paintings at during this time period. If anybody has any questions or does not understand anything, please just ask in the comments. Another style that Picasso adopted in his paintings is the analytic cubism. Colors basically just means that it was focused on brown, like a brown that is only one tone, not many different shades or tones, and contain colors that aren't very like deep. This time period lasted from 1909 to 1912. As you can see in the picture, it shows that it's basically based around cubes, and it's a certain technique that Picasso invented. Another method is synthetic cubism, which lasted from 1912 to 1919. This was also during the First World War, which lasted from 1914 to 1918. It shows a form of collage where cut out paper fragments were pasted together. Does anybody know what a collage is? No, well, a collage is basically when small pictures are combined together to make a bigger picture. So, for example, the picture on the right shows collage as it is a bunch of smaller pictures pasted together or stuck together. This was a different type of cubism. Cubism comes from the word cube, which basically means squares. And it was another method that Picasso invented. Here are some more type images of cubism invented, paintings that Picasso created. On the left is a picture of Picasso himself, just in front of one of his cubism pieces of art. And on the right is another cubism. Here are two examples of cubism were also created by Picasso during the same time period between 1912 and 1919. Now, most of these paintings are in many different museums all over the world, as Picasso was very well known. The next time period was, the next famous painting, sorry, was a portrait of, or image of the German bombing of Guernica. This took place during the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. It was one of Picasso's most famous pieces of art. Some argue that it is the most famous piece of art created by Picasso. And it was a depiction of the German bombing of Guernica, a Spanish city, during the Civil War. Now, does anybody know what a depiction is? Basically, a depiction is just a representation or how someone views a certain topic. So this image is a depiction of Picasso's point of view. It shows what Picasso thought of the situation. It explains the chaos and the damage that was caused during the Spanish Civil War. It also explains that Picasso was anti-war or against the concept of war in general. The next time period included the World War II and the late 1940s. Now, World War II took place from 1939 to 1945. During World War II, Picasso took refuge or stayed in Paris while the Germans occupied the city. Now, as mentioned previously, Picasso spent most of his adult life in France, which was involved in the World War, in the Second World War. And the Germans took over the city, or occupied the city during part of the war. During the war, the Germans also created secret police. Occupied is just basically when a certain government or people take control of another land that does not belong to them. Picasso was often harassed by the secret police. Harassed basically just means that he was disturbed by them. The secret police once walked in on the painting, this one, the bombing of Guernica, and one of the police officers asked if he made it, whereas Picasso replied and said, "No, you guys did this," showing that again he was against the war and blamed secret police. During the war, Picasso continued to paint, and he also used writing poems and plays as another way to vent out his stress or worry. It was a very difficult time for the whole of Europe and the whole world. And this was Picasso's idea of getting through it. An example of a painting is the Charnel House. This was a painting that was drawn during the World War. During this time period, Picasso also wrote two full plays that are very famous to this day. He also wrote many different poems. Here is another example of a painting from the same time period, and it is called The Still Life with Guitar. And this painting involves a lot of color and was worth a lot of money later on. After this time period, it was just a time period that was named as the later works towards his final years of life. During this time, Picasso made sculptures, including the Chicago Picasso, which is a 50-foot high public cubist sculpture. Now, does everybody know what a sculpture is? Yes, sure, Bora, what's a sculpture? It's okay, Bora. Basically, a sculpture A sculpture is just a yes, that's kind of close for boy. Yes, I get what you mean. That's basically close, yeah. This was the Chicago puppet Picasso, which obviously, believe it or not, is in Chicago. Picasso made this in the later years of his life. He was offered $100,000 to create this sculpture. However, Picasso did not accept the money and did it for free as a donation to the people in Chicago. This was very generous of him, and it gave him a good reputation till this day. Picasso's most expensive painting is the less famous The Algar, which is worth $179 million today. Now, I repeat, when was Picasso born and where was he born? Does anybody want to answer? Okay. Picasso was born on the past as well. The questions are being typed. When did Picasso die? Fine. And you can check your answers when I say them as well. Now, Picasso died on the is where did Picasso spend his adult life? As you can see, Khadija is repeating the questions in case you don't hear me. Spent most of his adult life in France. The next question is what was Okay, the answer is that Picasso's first word was "pis", which is Spanish for pencil. Exactly. Thank you, Abdul. That's correct. Thank you. What age was Picasso admitted to college? Does anybody know the answer? That's correct, Abdulkarim. Well done. Thank you. Can anyone name some of the time periods of his paintings? This is a tougher one. If you remember, Picasso split his work in different periods. Can anybody name any of these periods? Can anyone remember the answer? Or an answer? Anyone could just make a guess. Yep. Okay. Some of his time periods were the Blue period, the Rose period, and the post-African period. The African influenced period. The next question is, how much money is his most expensive painting worth? Sure, Rabor, what's the question? What kind of grammar is this question? I don't understand your question, Rabor. What do you mean by what kind of grammar? Is this present simple? Oh, what were some of his simple? No, this is past tense, actually. But that's a good question. It's good to know. Present means we would be talking about now or today. The question said, what were some of his time periods? The word were means that it's talking about the past. So we're asking what were some of his time periods. It's just like was. It talks about something that happened before. I hope that answered your question, Rabor. If you have any other questions, just yes, past simple. If you have any questions, just go ahead. As in how much money? You're welcome, Robor. To repeat the question, how much is his most expensive painting worth? Past perfect. Um, I'll check to find out 100% sure, Robor. Just 1 second. Okay, Abu Dhakr, you're correct. Robor, it's all right. No, don't apologize. I found the answer to your question. So there isn't past present. It's either past simple or present perfect. To change it to present perfect, you would say, what are some of his time periods? Which would talk about how it is today or now. That's present perfect. But the question now is in past simple because it's asking about something that happened before. So to change it, it is what are some of his time periods? It's completely fine. You can ask whatever question you like. Well done, Abu Dhakr. That's the correct answer. His most expensive painting is worth $179 million. The next question is, where is his sculpture? Which city? Um, so past perfect in this case, I tried to find that you can't really change it to past perfect. It's past perfect isn't used that much in English. Past simple is more common. Does anybody know where Picasso's sculpture is? Which city? Like Khadija said, city or country, either or, doesn't matter. Does anybody know the answer? If no one knows the answer is that his sculpture is in Chicago. It's called the Chicago Picasso. The next question is, aside from painting, what else did he do? As in, what jobs did he do? Does anybody know? To repeat, aside from painting, what other jobs did Picasso do? Okay, to answer the question, Picasso was also a poet and a stage designer. The next question is, can anyone name one of Picasso's paintings? Once again, can anyone name any of Picasso's paintings? The old guitarist. Yes. Well done, Abdukar. Thank you. That's a correct answer. Um, some other examples are also the A Lapin Agile or the portrait of Gertrude Stein. The next and last question is, was Picasso with or against war? Does he support it or does he think it's a bad thing? Yeah, of course, guess. But it's also in the PowerPoint in case you want to go back and check it. Correct, war. He was completely against war and he thought it. All right, well, if no one has any other questions, thank you guys so much for watching. If any of this is interesting or if you want to go over it again, the PowerPoint should have been emailed to you guys by N.E.S.T. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good night. Thank you. Bye.